Welcome, everyone, to the CMH podcast. I'm Laurel, one of the content developers with the Academy of Integrative Mental Health, and your host for today. And our guest today is Karen Helfrich. She is a licensed clinical social worker, therapist, and financial wellness educator. And I'm so excited to talk with her today and get her wisdom and expertise on financial wellness. So welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So can you tell us, just to start out, a little bit about you and your background, how you found your way into the work that you're doing right now?
Sure. So I've been in the mental health field for almost 25 years, and I have had a journey through the world of social work, had a variety of experiences in a wide variety of settings. And over the past 10 years, I've been in private practice where my clinical work has been mostly focused on trauma and somatic therapies. And I've had really wonderful experiences personally and professionally and uh, with my clients through this journey. And rather unexpectedly, as a business owner, and then in working with women, started to find over and over again that uh, mental health related to personal finance was coming into the therapy session. And oh my gosh, almost 15 years ago, I had gotten this financial social work certification that I had no idea what to do with it. But all of a sudden, I was realizing that these issues were coming into the therapy session, and I was really enjoying working with my clients around this topic. And then, of course, talking with other business owners, and I just started to see this theme of how these issues were coming up, um, and that it was really wonderful to work with. And I think it's something that is very neglected in our clinical work because we see personal finance as something very practical and very separate from our mental health. Um, but I would argue that it's not.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and that's why I really was excited to talk to you about this today, because I don't remember really touching on that, maybe more than a passing comment in my education, my clinical education. And so um, I think that's a niche that is really missing, because I know that I've had clients, many clients, and their financial status and wellness and struggles absolutely impact their overall well-being and flourishing, and so of course it comes into the therapy session. Um, can you define a little bit more for our listeners, like what all of those terms, like kind of the umbrella terms of maybe like financial literacy or financial wellness, might contain in the work that you do with clients?
Sure, sure. So when we're talking about financial literacy, there we really are talking about, does a person have a basic understanding of how money works in their personal arena, right? So, um, everything from uh, does this person understand how to engage with a bank, right? To does this person understand, again, on a basic level, how debt works, how to understand what the terms of a credit card are or a loan are, right? So when we're talking about financial literacy, we are talking about a basic knowledge of how money works in a personal finance way. And we can have a basic understanding, and obviously that can get more complex once we, start to think about, different kinds of loans or saving for retirement or investments, right? So, um, and for financial wellness professionals such as myself, um, the work that we can do is really around education, right? So somebody who is going to be advising someone on investing or things like that, that is another profession, right, that has
Right.
its own ethics and certifications. So for us, it's more about um really on a literacy level, um making sure that our clients understand how these basic processes of personal finance work. So that's the financial literacy side. Um,
Mhm.
but financial wellness also encompasses the money psychology, right?
Mm.
Which is, I think, well, financial literacy is definitely neglected, and then the money psychology is just not addressed at all. I think in our
Yeah.
culture, right?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so and the thing that is so crazy to me is that personal finance is the foundation for everything else in our lives. Everything else.
Mm.
And schools have only just started implementing some financial literacy for children, but most of us have never received a financial literacy education at all.
Yeah.
And Um, and so we are just expected to somehow just know how to handle our money and how to manage it. And then there's so much shame when we don't, because that expectation is, well, you should just know. And if you don't know, then you're bad with money. You are irresponsible and you are a poor adult, right?
Mm.
You are not good
Yeah.
at adulting. And yet, why would we know? If we never receive a formal education, why would we know? And yet we are surrounded by and bombarded by um, systems and processes and constant marketing that is very sophisticated and knowledgeable about our money psychology and leveraging that constantly, right? In order
Yeah.
to help us enact whatever our relationship with money is in order to part with it, right?
Mm. Mm.
So the financial wellness piece that incorporates that money psychology is really about helping um, clients, one, separate from that story of shame and guilt around their financial habits and behaviors and circumstances, right?
Mhm.
And then really working through what is that money story and what are those behaviors that are not serving us, and then rebuilding that money story and shifting those behaviors to where we are more in alignment and more at peace within our financial world.
Yeah. Wow, okay, so I have several questions I wanna ask in response to that.
Sure.
The first thing that comes up is it sounds like money psychology is really complicated and complex, to me. I maybe possibly because I didn't ever receive a formal education, b both in my clinical education, but also just in my general, like, life education in school as a person, and so I think even that idea sounds to me maybe feels overwhelming and sort of intimidating, and I'm wondering if that is certainly connected to the shame that and the money story that you were referencing. But I'm wondering if it's common, and that's why people just don't want to talk about it. Is like it's very scary to them to even touch, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have untold number of rules in our culture about how we do money and how we talk about money and how it's okay to talk about money and how it's not okay to talk about money. And
Right.
um it's certainly considered okay, sort of, to show off money, right?
Hmm.
Except not too much, right?
Mhm.
And of course, what is considered okay to talk about is also depends on your identity, right? So it's different for men than women, right? It's different depending on what race you are, what your ethnic and cultural background is. So identity plays a huge role in how we experience money and talking about money. And so, as clinicians, we can help our clients just identify what are the rules that we've been living by, right? And so many, as with everything else, so many of these rules are unspoken, right? We've learned through our experiences growing up what is okay and what is not okay. And then each family, of course, is a culture unto itself. So within an identity, within a culture, a specific family is going to have um, can have very different values and expectations based on ancestral experiences around money and trauma, um, generational experiences, right? So what? So the economy that a generation experienced during their childhood is going to entirely affect how they relate to money, right? So we think about, those of us who had grandparents or great grandparents who experienced the Depression, right? There's many stories of how that generation never wanted to throw anything away,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so when there is a collective trauma around money and resources, right? That is going to then affect how that generation passes on um, all of those unspoken rules around money. But then that next generation is experiencing a certain economy, right? Which is then going to influence how they then relate to money and personal finance. And so when this is not unpacked, right? As with
Yeah.
everything else that as clinicians we know, right? It's not different than what we already know, but there is one thing that is different, which is this particular thing, money, is designated as separate from all of these other wellness behaviors, right?
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
we don't learn about it in school and we don't talk about it with our clients because we haven't done our own work. We are scared, right? As helpers. I mean, how many conversations have we had about, especially those of us that own businesses, of, you know, needing to do our money work because it's so hard to, collect that late cancellation fee,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't talk about it with our clients because we're just as guilt-ridden, just as shame-filled, and we haven't unpacked it, right? And so it's just something we would rather not talk about altogether.
Oh, completely. I think I've said those words before, like, I just don't wanna ever talk about money, ever. That's why I got
Right.
into this job, so I didn't have to talk about finances and numbers, and I've never been good at math. I mean, there's all kinds of layers, I'm sure, personally, that I could unpack to your point of everybody's story being very specific and complex and unique, but yeah, I think there is, of course, it seems to me to be a general fear in our community of having those conversations. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so what I find so interesting is that even as I have delved into this work um and begun having these conversations and worked with this with my clients, I mean, even as we're talking about it right now, like I feel the scared, right?
Me
I
too.
feel the electricity of oh my gosh, what's going to happen, where is this going to go, is it going to be okay, you know
Yeah.
um and for those of us who have experienced socialization as girls and women, there is an extra layer, which
Yeah.
is we need to be nice,
Mhm.
right? We are expected to be generous. We are
Yes.
expected to say, "Oh, yeah, you've missed the last 3 sessions? Yes, of course, I'm not gonna charge you. Yes, I understand." Right?
Mhm.
And it is a violation of the code of female nurturance and generosity and caregiving, right? To hold that boundary.
Absolutely. And that I'm so glad that you're bringing this into the conversation because that was another one of the questions that I was really curious about from you is the gender differences, like being raised as a woman, or as a feminine person in our society. If that has obviously that has an influence in that message that we should be nice and we should be nurturing. But I'm also curious about the message that, girls and women are just quote unquote bad with money, um, that we're sort of born into this role of not being financially literate. Women tend to go into the business world less than, the business world is very male dominated typically. Are there a lot of layers that you see as far as gender differences in how our money
So
stories are
so
created?
many, so
Mhm.
many. Um, I mean, I would argue we get messages that we are less deserving of or entitled to money, to our own money, right? Think about, a man who desires to acquire wealth and works to acquire wealth and has ambitions of acquiring wealth is a good man, right?
Yeah,
He's doing man correctly, right? But a
mhm,
woman who desires wealth and has ambition for wealth, right? So she is a gold digger. She might be considered a bitch. She might be considered cold or calculating, or it's not what we are supposed to want. We are supposed to be grateful if somebody takes us under their protection, right?
right,
And then of course we're supposed to trade our unpaid emotional and domestic labor for that protection,
right.
right? Um, and then God forbid if that arrangement ends, we should expect to half of it, right? Then we're considered bad for that, right? But think about, a woman sitting going to a job interview. I've had so many clients who have brought, well, I'm applying for this job and I'm going for this interview, and the fear and the reluctance to stand in one's confidence and one's truth with an expectation of what that salary will be and to ask for it, right? And
Mhm.
so, when we've sat and really worked through that nervous system response, right, and done parts work around the parts that are present, right, and really feeling scared to ask for the right amount of money, right?
Yeah,
But when we think about this collectively and over time, right, as women, we are charged more for goods and services, right? The pink tax that gets talked about.
mhm,
And of course, we are paid less with the gender pay gap. But we are also less likely to advocate for ourselves financially. We are less likely to tend to the money that does come to us, and more likely to be generous and to feel like we need to be generous with our money, right? How many of us have um jumped in to, whether it's, paying for a dinner out or taking care of a partner or a friend, in a way that, yes, is coming from, again, a place of care and, um, wanting to be pro-social, right? And really be engaged in that relationship. And yet, how many times is that generosity really coming at the expense of present or future security for that woman, right? In a
Mm,
way that where the benefit to the other person does not match the cost to the woman that's offering it,
mm, mhm,
right? And we don't even think about these things, right? Which really affects women's financial wellness over a lifetime, right? And then particularly as we move into the second half of life.
sure. Gosh, I mean, as you're talking, I can literally think of memories in my own life where I've experienced situations or beliefs about myself or beliefs about money that sound very familiar, and related to what you're speaking to. And so I can connect it back to what you were saying as a professional, how that really might impact my willingness to go there with my clients, you
Mhm.
know? And
Sure.
so many, tying that into so many folks in the mental health community are women. The mental health community
Right.
is a
Yep.
female dominated um community in many ways, or a feminine dominated community in so many ways. And so that has to make a difference too. I would be curious about how those gender differences, even into the mental health field, impact our conversations about money with our clients, because it sounds like it's often has the potential to be this just like unspoken elephant in the room on both
Mhm.
ends.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely, on both ends. I mean, it's none of us like talking about this with our clients, especially when it's about the clinician client financial relationship, right?
Right.
Which it makes sense. So what we want to understand is that money fundamentally and foundationally represents security. And our
Mm,
brains and our nervous systems know that,
mm,
right? So we have formed our belief system, our core belief system about money by the age of 7.
hmm,
Before most of us have ever earned a dollar or even entirely know what a dollar is. But we do have a foundational emotional understanding of that this thing, money, is worked for, and then it is used in order to procure shelter, clothing, food, medicine, status, relationship, right? But we also have learned within our family and within our culture what money means, right? So we know that it is required for security, right? And status, which also means security. That's about, again, on a nervous system level, that's about, do I securely belong to the herd,
mhm,
right? And money, we know that money is absolutely required for that, right? But then we have beliefs we learn is is somebody who has money, does that mean we learn, like, okay, somebody who has money is a better person than somebody who doesn't?
yeah,
Or it could be that in our family we get the message that somebody who has money is greedy and selfish and a bad person, and people like us who don't have money, we yes, we struggle, but we're good people. And
mm,
having money is bad, right? So we could see a client who maybe grew up in poverty and then comes into middle class or upper middle class or even wealth, and then we might see them in therapy really struggling with connection to their family of origin because they might be feeling rejected because they have acquired affluence, right?
Yeah.
So again, by the age of 7, we have learned what money means, and we have learned whether or not it's okay to have money, and and how money should be used, and whether it can be talked about or not talked about, right? And it's not because somebody sat down and said these things to us most of the time. This we have absorbed it in a nonverbal way, the way that we have everything else, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so, and then and of course, we get the gendered messages, right? About money. And we see the way that our parents relate to money. We know if they talk to us about it or they don't, right? We see stressors, we see the emotion, right? And we're kind of bathed in it, right? And so all of that then is informing that entire experience, right? And so then, and I'm sorry, I have lost what your question was
You're doing
that I
great.
was
I'm
responding
I'm
to.
just absorbing all of it. This is so
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It just sounds like I'm thinking now about what you said about parts work, and it
Mm-hmm.
really sounds
Mm-hmm.
like there is, to your point about learning these money messages before age 7, there is so much that's so unconscious that we just don't even realize is happening on a day-to-day basis. We think of
Yeah.
money again as this like very sort of mathematical foundational practical thing. And that there a lot of the financial advice I think we receive as adults in our culture, at least, or the culture I grew up in, are very practical tips, right? Just like open a savings account, have build credit, those kinds of things. But if you have all of these unconscious parts talking back and forth to each other, the practical tips, it almost sounds like the icing on the cake, like great, but how are you even gonna get there? Am I hitting on
Absolutely.
does
Yeah.
that resonate at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is notorious among accountants and financial advisors that they will sit down with a client and they will come up with a brilliant plan, right? And the client is like, "Yes, this is great. I'm going to take these next steps and I'm going to go do them." And then the next time they meet, the advisor or the accountant is like, "Okay, so where are we?" And the client has not done them. And so they do the plan again. And the same thing happens, right? Because what is not being addressed, and there are some advisors and accountants who are getting this, and some of them actually will have folks like us either on staff or that they refer to in order to help clients. Because I would posit that money is a wellness behavior,
Mm,
right? Money is a wellness behavior. It is not practical. Like other wellness behaviors, does it have practical behavior um, strategies that we want to get to be implementing? Absolutely, right? But it is fundamentally a wellness behavior, and once we recognize that, right now we're talking about attachment. Now we're talking about parts,
yep.
right?
Mm,
So if we understand clinically that as human beings, we are walking around and acting our attachment strategies, right? And then there's this thing that is core to our sense of security. How would we not be engaging with that thing through and with our core attachment strategies?
mhm.
And then you take people socialized as women, right? And everything we are taught about how to attach, how to earn love, how to gain acceptance and security in the herd and with a partner, right? And it's
Yep.
kind of a wonder that we have money at all, right?
Yeah,
Because, yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So, um, so with our clients, we can really put on that lens of parts, right? How are parts of self reacting and engaging with that sense of um I want this security, right? This thing means security, but I'm also, and I think this is what we do. We're like, I'm going to give away financial security in order to have relational security,
Mm, yeah.
right? And I think men get a different message, right? But again, and then as with everything else, when we're talking about attachment and parts, it's going to be very the structure of it's going to be very unique to
Sure.
to us and to our client, right? Um, and so, but when we can start to see, okay, even in that conversation about a job interview, right? And what it's going to mean to say, well, I was envisioning this as a salary, right? Instead of what they're offering.
Yeah.
Right now we're risking, what are they going to think of me? Right?
Mhm.
Am I really worth that? Are they going to still like me? Right? And then whatever the story is it, what if I can't live up to that expectation, or whatever whatever the story is, right? But all of those are going to be parts related and attachment related. Because then what happens inside, how do we physiologically respond to any of those aspects that feel threatening,
Right.
right?
Mm.
So when it comes to money and our clients, and we're so scared, if we really stop to unpack it, a lot of we do know how to do this, right? Through the frame of however it is that we're working with attachment
Sure.
with our clients.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. I'm really when you mentioned attachment and our attachment style and strategy, you if people were watching, my eyes, like, got real big because I was just thinking, like, "Whoa." Like, I've never really connected attachment and finances before this conversation, and I think that's a hugely helpful reframe for me personally, but also could be incredibly helpful for clients, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
so many of us do in various ways use language around attachment, around parts, especially if you're working with trauma. So there is likely already somewhat of a foundation in that work period in the therapy space. So bringing that frame and setting it over top of this financial situation in whatever way is presenting itself, I think helps bridge that gap a little bit because it's like, okay, this is something that I already understand. And I think of finances
absolutely.
as something I don't understand at all. But if I can think of it in terms that make sense to me, then it's less threatening. And I
Yeah,
think that's really valuable.
yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I would love to see shift,
Yes.
um, for especially for those of us socialized as women, is the belief that we should, in order to be good women, that we should reject valuing money. I've
Yes.
heard so many clients say to me that they're upset about this financial aspect of their lives or this behavior that they keep doing, and they follow that up with, but money isn't important to me,
Mhm.
right? Which is really, they're really saying, I don't want you to think that I care more about money than I care about people,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And it breaks my heart every time I hear that. And I always stop and we work on that statement every time it comes up, because because money is the foundation, right? It's like we wouldn't say, I don't care about my home,
Right.
right? I'm going to throw the doors open and anybody that wants to come in can come in, and if they want to take something they can take something, and cuz I don't care, right? We
Mhm.
wouldn't say that. And yet that is how we treat our money, and yet our money decides whether or not we get to have a home, decides whether or not we get to have health care, unfortunately, right? It decides how we are able to take care of our children if we have them. It decides whether or not we have them, right? I'm thinking
Yeah.
about there's a company, and I don't remember the name, but the CEO decided several years ago that I think nobody was in the company was going to make less than like $70,000. And he took a
Mm.
huge pay cut, and everybody said, "Oh, your company's going to fail." Well, after everybody started making $70,000, like 60 babies have been born,
Oh, I believe
right?
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so so money really determines what our life is.
Yeah.
And for us to say, "And I don't care about it," is crazy. And it's not that that individual who has said it is crazy. That's what we're taught.
Sure. Yeah.
But that is the insanity of what we are taught,
Mhm.
right? Is that we should not care about this when in fact, right? We wouldn't say, "Oh, I don't care about my health," right? When in fact, caring about our financial health, our financial wellness should be at the very top of the list,
Mhm.
right? If we're making
Mhm.
sure we're staying hydrated, and we're making sure we're getting movement in, and we're doing our meditation, and we're, getting our five fruits and vegetables in every day, whatever, right? Even before all of that, how is my money? How is my ability to provide for myself and my children?
Mm. Gosh, as you're saying that, as there's a part of me that is like, "Yes, 100%," and there's still a part of me that's like, "Oh, I don't wanna think about that ever," you know? And so
Yep,
it's just so
yep.
telling. Yeah, I only share that like, to be in real time of how telling
Mhm.
all of the things that you're saying are, right? I mean,
Right, and
it's
I
so
don't.
real. It's so
It is
real.
so real, and to be clear, I don't say any of this like I have figured it out and solved it all for
Oh,
myself,
sure.
right? In real
Mhm.
time, I am I have these conversations, and in the back of my mind I'm like, "Oh, I did that thing again."
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Um and so yeah, and so but again, there's that guilt and shame,
Yep.
right? That guilt and shame around um we I mean, again, especially around money, we should not care about money, but we shouldn't have any financial mistakes.
Mhm. Mm.
We should have it
Yep.
all together and yet not care about it, right? Just like we should all be a size 6, but also eat cheeseburgers,
Yeah, right.
right?
Or like we should all be the same size body, but be able to do that effortlessly. Like, or like
Exactly,
it
exactly.
should just be as easy as a mathematical formula to all be the same size body when of course
Yep.
it's not. Of course it's
And
not.
it absolutely isn't. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and so and it's interesting to me, and this has informed my approach to personal financial management, is the idea of dieting and restriction
Mhm.
versus intuitive eating and health at every size, right?
Yeah.
And that, just like we decide, okay, on Monday, I am going to start this really restrictive diet and I'm going to stick to it, and it's going to be different this time, right? How many
Mhm.
times have we done that? And it fails, and we know why it fails,
Right.
right? And yet we do the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to get my financial stuff together, and I bought this financial guru's book, and or I got this app and I'm going to do this thing, right? Because somehow I believe I'm going to wake up on Monday morning and be a different person than I was on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And but if we haven't unpacked any of that money story, right? Any of our embodied beliefs about money, about relationship, right? Then okay, maybe on Monday we're going to do this new thing, but by Friday or even by Tuesday afternoon, right? If we have chosen something that is so in opposition to what our money story is, um and how we meet our needs, then we're not going to be successful in that thing, but we're going to think that we failed when
Right.
really the thing that we were offered, right, addressed that practical piece, right, but did not do anything about who we are as financial beings or as beings engaging with finance.
Mhm. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking I do a lot of like clinical work with intuitive eating and working on body image stories and understanding our relationship with food with my clients. And I think about that concept of restricting as leading to the sort of desert island mentality in your body of, "Well, we don't know when we're going to get food again. And so we better like binge so that we can store up for our own security and safety." And I'm curious if you've seen those patterns play out financially for folks of, I'm going to start
Yeah.
this restrictive plan that somebody out of the goodness of their heart advised me to do so that I can start a savings
Hmm.
account, right? But that feels so, to your point, antithetical to my money story that it puts me in this weird survival sort of a state in my body and in my mind. And then I end up kind of rebounding, that rubber band
Yeah.
snap. um,
Yeah.
it sounds very similar.
Yeah. I absolutely believe that that is what happens, right? Because
Mhm.
again, if we believe that we are in scarcity, right, that
Right.
sets off um uh triggers in us that are not all happening in our conscious awareness. And well, then we're going to go splurge on, whether it's a big Amazon delivery or you know concert tickets or whatever, um because I deserve it, because I've been so good,
Yeah. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
When really, if we planned for our um self-care expenditures. So let me
Yep.
back up for a minute, because um the way that I talk with clients about spending is, we step outside of the discussion that often happens where it's like, okay, well, what is a need and versus a want, right? Like that. And I think that's a very
Mhm.
shaming question.
Oh, for
But I
sure. I hate
argue
that
that,
question.
yeah, I argue that everything that we spend money on is a need.
Mm. Mhm.
It is meeting a need. And so, but the question is, what is the need that's being met? Right.
Right.
So if 4 out of 5 days I get up from my desk, so I'm talking as if most people are still in offices and
Sure.
many of us
Yeah,
are
we'll
not,
run with
but
that. Yeah.
anymore, but we'll go with it, right? If at 10:30, 4 out of 5 mornings, I get up from my desk and I walk down to the corner Starbucks and get my $5 latte, right? Um that terrible $5 latte, the reason millennials can't buy a home, right? Um
Exactly. The only
and
reason.
I get my $5 latte and I hang out there for a while and then I come back to my desk. can we say that the latte is not a need, right? Do you need the latte to survive? Well, no, of course not, right? But is the need to get up from your desk and go outside,
Right.
right? Is the need to be around other people who are not your coworkers for 15 minutes,
Right.
right? Is the need to uh go and give something to yourself that brings pleasure,
Mhm.
right? And so when we can look at our expenses and really compassionately explore what is the need that's getting met, because our needs are not just survival needs,
Sure.
right? We have needs for um, creativity, we have needs for play, we have needs for companionship, for socialization, for community, right? We have needs for mental space, for daydreaming.
Mhm.
Um, and so when we can really stop the judgment about spending and say, okay, what is the need that's being met? And again, treat it really compassionately, then we can say, oh, okay, I didn't realize my need is really to have something tasty, and I love the atmosphere of the coffee shop,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Okay. So then we can look at, is every step, including spending the $5 on the latte, necessary to meet this need? Maybe it is,
Sure.
right? So then we just want to plan for that spending if possible, right? We want to work it into, right? I got to pay my rent. I got to buy groceries. I got to pay the bills. This latte is one of those things, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe it's like, well, I'm still going to get up at 10:30 and walk down to this coffee shop, but I'm going to buy one of their like reusable cups, and I'm going to bring my latte with me
Yeah.
and get that sense of collective, you know, and get to be in that
Absolutely.
space,
Mhm.
right? And feel grounded and centered in my decision to do this, that it is aligned with my values. I have consciously and in awareness and with self-compassion decided I am going to still go do this thing, but I'm bringing this beverage with me and not spending that money here,
Yeah.
right? And so there's an opportunity for peace with that versus, oh, if I go to Starbucks, I'm going to spend the $5, so I got to stay at my desk, right? Well,
Right.
then the need's not getting met. But if we don't unpack it, we don't know what that is. And then 3 days later, up, I'm back at Starbucks again and I'm a failure,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So
Mm.
so it can seem like it's a little thing, but it's not. It's
Nope.
not. And it doesn't mean, okay, well, if all expenses are needs, then I just keep doing what I've been doing and have a free for all. It doesn't mean that. But it means let's be awake and intentional.
Yeah, of course, and compassionate, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think of the concept again, I know I keep relating it back to what you said about intuitive eating, but I think about the concept of the gentle nutrition, right? And so we wanna have, like,
Mhm.
financial nutrition, it sounds like,
Yep.
of no, it's
Yes.
not just a free for all of, like, I buy anything I want anytime. I really think about, like, a holistic model of meeting all the different kinds of needs I might have
Yep.
in my
Yep.
life, and allowing myself to have permission to have all of those different kinds of needs, not just practical needs. Like, I have permission to have needs beyond survival and needs beyond the practical. I think that's
Yep.
really beautiful because it extends to so many other things, but it also absolutely takes away so much of that shame around feeling afraid of finances or feeling like a failure around finances.
Yes. And that is really at the beginning of the work of healing, is really destigmatizing
Yeah.
money, right?
Mhm.
And moving away, as in everything else that we do with our clients, again, but really moving away from that guilt and shame narrative to one of compassion, right? Whatever our strategy is, whether it's about money or anything else, as clinicians, we recognize this this strategy may have unintended consequences, right? It may not be serving our clients, or for us, our strategy may not be serving us anymore, right?
Right.
But we can absolutely have compassion for the intention behind the strategy, right? Which for all of us is, we all just want to feel safe,
Yeah.
right? We want to feel safe that we are connected, and that we can explore, that we can go out and take risk and come back and feel safe, right? And then
Mhm.
we feel safe and we can go out and take risks again. And with money, as with everything else, when we come at it from a place of guilt and shame, that is just going to shut us down, and we're not able to move into healing and expansion and intentionality, right? We're not able to be in alignment with our true values because we're locked in that fear,
Mhm.
with that shame and guilt.
Mm. I have I feel like this could be an many hours conversation. Like, there's so much wisdom in
Absolutely.
that. And I'm sure it extends into many, many conversations in your work with clients, right? But I
Yep.
mean, the things that I'm hearing you talk about are these individual things of like my own personal story and shame and guilt. But then also, I have thoughts coming into my head as you're talking about, like, oh, the patriarchy frustrates me so much because it's created this system. And I'm curious, eh, are there times that you have been talking with folks or even been exploring this for yourself where you find that there's anger that comes up, not just guilt and shame, but, you know, um, I think about what you said of I don't care about money, right? Is
Mhm.
there I don't care about money because I'm angry that I have to care about money, or because I'm angry that I don't have money. Is anger often a part of these conversations in your experience?
Absolute yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we think about, all the things that we experience through childhood, and uh the anger that often is a healthy part of the healing process.
Mhm.
Um, but our anger is our life force saying no,
Yes.
right? Anger is our life force saying no. And when we can tune into that and recognize it as, oh, this is my being saying, no, this does not work for me, right? And then again, through parts work or whatever our, attachment healing modality is, really help our clients give voice to that part, and really allow that part, that feeling, um, to be heard by the one who observes, the one who notices,
Mm.
right? And then, because what that anger needs is for that one who notices in us to say, okay, I hear you, and I recognize that I need to take protective action, right, to care for us,
Yep.
right? And so anger is incredibly healthy
Sure.
and useful in the healing and repair, process. And of course, we can have collective anger about oppressive experiences that we are all having. I mean, we are in a time of great financial oppression,
Yeah.
right? And so, there's a lot of anger among clinicians about reimbursement rates,
Right. Mhm.
right? And feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. And again, when we're talking about the thing that is the foundation of every aspect of our lives and of our security and our ability to care for ourselves and our families and our loved ones, right? There is a lot of anger, much of it warranted and appropriate.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I think about the anger that I can access or can touch at this point in our conversation even. I think of course it's warranted. It's so interesting to me how this again seemingly very practical formulaic thing extends both vertically and horizontally into our systems,
Yep.
into our society, into our internal systems, into our relationships and how we interact and all of those. And so I think accessing any feelings that come up around it would have to be a really important, giving ourselves permission to have the anger. Absolutely. Giving ourselves permission to have um, frustration or the feeling of being blocked in whatever way is coming up because that's how we change things ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that our anger also can be necessary in the waking up process, in the
Sure.
becoming aware process, um and that you know we need a time and space for anger in order to not collapse back into the story and the belief and the ways of being
Right.
that are not serving us, but especially when our environment is putting so much pressure on us to not be financially awake,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so anger, again, that no, that defensive push, right? um I just think is so, especially for women, is so important. um and but I want to offer a reframe
Sure,
for
please.
the I don't care about money,
Mhm. Please.
and what it means to care about money, because I think that the messaging that we receive is that there's only one way to care about money,
Mm.
and that is to care about materialism, to be materialistic, to care about uh, being able to buy things and to demonstrate wealth, right? In very visible,
Mhm.
Instagrammy ways. And I think that that's another thing that women are saying when they say, "Well, I don't care about money," is they're saying, "I don't care about the material." And there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. It's just that that isn't the only way to care about money. We can care very much about money, and we can make money very much a priority and have it be values aligned.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that when we shift from thinking about the things that money can buy to the time and the flexibility that money can buy,
Mhm.
now we're having a different conversation. The
Right.
more financial flexibility we have, the more control we have over our time, how we spend our time, and the more control we have over our circumstances, right? So, what I mean by that is that, um, and I use the example of people who are able to afford to have a car,
Mm.
right? If
Yeah.
you can afford to have a car, you have just recaptured hours of your day that you are not spending waiting for a bus, taking a bus, right? Whatever public transportation, walking, right? Waiting for whomever you're dependent upon to come pick you up, right? So financially, the ability to have a car, not a fancy car, not a flashy car, just the ability to have a car, right?
Mhm.
Reclaims several hours of your day, but not just that. It also gives you more choices about where you can be employed, right?
Mhm.
If you don't have a car, now where you can work is dependent on where you can walk or where you can get public transportation or where somebody you know can take you,
Right.
right? And so money, right? So let's say, we're doing well enough that we have a car and much more than that. Well, then we can start buying services,
Mhm.
right? Now I'm reclaiming time because my groceries are delivered. Now I'm reclaiming time because I am able to have pay for somebody to come clean my home, right? So, but financial flexibility also means this job environment has become really toxic. I don't have to stay here. I have the option to leave because I have 3 months of a cushion
Right.
or 6 months of a cushion or whatever, right?
Sure.
This relationship is not serving me. I am able to leave because I am not financially dependent on this partner,
Yeah.
right? So, now often parents, and I struggle with this mightily myself. Often parents are like, "Well, I'm spending this money on my kids. Like I don't want my kids to go without, right?
Mhm.
And I don't want to be selfish, right? So I don't care about money. I don't care about myself. I want my kids to be okay."
Yeah.
Well, ask me how many clients I've had who are adults with parents who have not cared for themselves financially and the amount of stress that this causes to their adult children, right? Our children want us as their parents, but particularly their moms, want us to be financially well. They want us to be financially secure. They would rather us have that than whatever the sneakers or the whatever, right? Now, does our child at a young age have the ability to articulate that or even understand the implications? No, no. But as women, it is one of the most loving things that we can do for our children and our friends and our parents and our loved ones to prioritize our financial well being. And it is not actually loving and relational to sacrifice that. We are not doing anybody any favors when we sacrifice our financial well being, particularly as we age, right?
Mhm.
Particularly how we are setting ourselves up for aging, right? Our loved ones are going to want us to be okay.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
if we can reframe from I care about money and that makes me materialistic to I care about money because I do love the people around me. So I want to have more access and control over my time and I want to have more control over my circumstances. That is what money buys us.
Mm. I really appreciate that reframe because I think so many women do see caring about money as automatically being labeled materialistic or just labeling ourselves as materialistic, right? And we don't want to think of ourselves that way. And I get it. Um, that's for many intents and purposes not a great value to hold
Right.
potentially,
And
you know?
and in our field, I'm not in it for the money. Well, yes,
Right.
yes, yes, we are. And if we're
Sure.
not, well, how convenient for everybody else.
Yes, right. I mean, we certainly live in a world where we have to pay our bills, so we have to be in it for the money a little bit,
Absolutely.
at
Yep.
least, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But
Yep.
it's so true. I think it is we do receive this sort of binary message of, you should be in a self-sacrificial way because you got into this job because you care about people and you wanna help people, and of course, I started this work because I care about people and people's stories, but
Yep.
not to my hopefully not to my own detriment, but that's the message we receive, is that if we care about people, we can't care about ourselves,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been so, so helpful, um, and as we sort of get to the end of our time and start to land this plane, I'm curious if you can give our listeners maybe just an example or like a more practical experiential taste of what you do when you do this work with folks.
So, yeah, so what I want to invite listeners to do and to take a moment and certainly if anybody listening has access to a pen and paper, this would be great to be able to write down, but of course we can just sit mindfully and consider um uh the question of connecting with what our highest values are when it comes to our personal finances, right? And so, what I sometimes invite clients to do is to project themselves 5, 10, 20 years into the future, right? Whatever makes sense for you. And really picture yourself, right? At that point in your life. And really take a moment and imagine, right? Where you are, is there work that you do, who your family is, how you spend your time. And then I want you to consider, right, that as your embodied self, how do you want to feel about your financial circumstances at that time, right? Do you want to feel relaxed? Do you want to feel like you are free, right? Or that things are in control, right? Think about what it is that you want to feel. And that's not going to be the same for everyone, right? So certainly we might all say, "Oh, well, I would love to be independently wealthy," right? And that's not going to be the reality for most people. Most people want something or expect something a little different than that, right?
Sure.
So see if you can land in what it is that you really want to feel in your financial situation. Again, that 5, 10, 15 years from now. And as you look back, as you sit in that place, as you look back over the time from now until then that has transpired, what do you want to know that you did with your money? What do you want to know that you prioritized? What are the steps that you want to know you took in order to create the financial reality that you're living in now? And how are you living with that money? So, whatever it is that you came up with, I want to invite you to write down a sentence or two, or just think in your mind a sentence or two that describes how it is that you feel and what it is that you did. And when you've done that, and again, even if you haven't written it down right now, I want to invite you to take the time later to make sure that you wrote it down. Because this statement, right? Of how you want to feel, what you want your circumstances to be, what you want to know you have done, provides a direction now for you to head in, right?
Mm,
As we are making financial decisions, when we have clarity about where it is that we want to be, now we can look at that as we are making our financial decisions with the question of, is what I'm about to do right now taking me in the direction of where it is that I know when I'm sitting in mindful awareness that I want to be? Because again, different parts of us are making different decisions about money at different
right.
times, right? And they're going to be in charge at different times. But the more clear we are about what our observer self, the one who notices, knows about where we want to be, now we have a standard for guiding what it is that we do.
Mm, that's so helpful. I really appreciate that the mindful awareness piece and just the noticing piece, because I think so many of us are just sort of trained to make financial decisions based on like the minute to minute, like, oh, I have to do this now. Oh, next, next comes this. And we, unless we are independently wealthy, which is very few of us, are not often given the chance to truly like sit with our desires and our goals, for not even just goals, like our needs for our life,
Yep.
our
Yep.
needs for our families and for ourselves. And so I think that's a great
Absolutely.
helpful start. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah.
So Karen, where can our listeners find you? How can they look into more of this if they're really interested in working with you or learning more about what you
Sure.
do?
Sure.
Plug away, and then we can make sure folks can get in contact with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I can be found at avalonhealers.com. Avalon Healers is all one word.
Mhm.
And financial wellness services are on the website. And if folks are interested and want to sign up for my course, I have a free class, which is the three principles of intuitive budgeting for women plus. And then that is the gateway to my signature course, Financially Free, which is an opportunity for comprehensive unpacking of our money story and really identifying what our core values are, our doing that future visualization. So, what we just did, but more in depth. All the way to developing a personal spending plan, and I call it a money flow, where we have mapped out strategies for paying down debt if we have it, for creating a savings engine, and really going through all of our expenses, the way that we talked about the latte of what need is being met, right? So students are invited to, get out all of their um, uh, spending information and really unpack what needs are getting met and determining how to shift so that our spending really is in alignment with our values and goals. And so I'm really proud of this course, and I really would love to share it with listeners. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put all of that information in the show notes and all of the links. And we really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your wisdom and giving our listeners some of that wisdom. And I hope that folks do take advantage of learning more through your courses, because the more women plus we have that feel financially well, I think the more change we're able to enact in so many ways in our world. So
Absolutely.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate you and the work that you've been doing, and I'm so grateful for this conversation. It's been really wonderful and enlightening, and I'm just have a lot to unpack for myself, and I'm so
Yeah,
thankful for that. So, thank you, Karen, so much for being with
sure.
us and talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. I love talking about this.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you do. It's made me feel even more comfortable talking about this because I'm not going to lie, it is my least favorite subject, or has been up until now, maybe today. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
so
Great.
thank you so much. And we hope to talk to you again soon.